Hello and welcome back to Asian Cinema Season 2, and I thought it was about high time I talked about Hayao Miyazaki. I guess we've already talked about him a few times in the Studio Ghibli with Connie episodes, and I've certainly not shut up about him in other elements and aspects of my channel over the many years that I've been a fan of his work, but I've never really talked about him in that much detail before, and that's for a very particular reason. In 2014, I wanted to do a whole month of Hayao Miyazaki related videos. It's going to be called Hayao Miyazaki Month. I had many things planned. I was going to do in-depth video essay reviews of all 11 of his movies. I was going to review some of the TV stuff that he'd done. I was going to review all of the Blu-rays of his movies. I was going to get guests on. I was going to review some of his written work, like the Nausicaa manga and so on. I had a lot of plans for it, and I was really looking forward to Hayao Miyazaki Month, and it was too big, and I never had a chance to really dig into it. And so I had some copyright issues with the first review that I did for that, which was a review of his first film, Lupin III, Castle of Cagliostro, which I was so happy with, but it did ultimately get removed from YouTube for copyright reasons, which is a real shame. So there's going to be a number of videos for Asian Cinema Season 2 that have been repurposed. You're going to see some old videos going up on the channel, some new stuff, and so I hope you look forward to that and enjoy them. It feels a bit weird to me kind of resurrecting these old videos back to life from the dead, but I feel like they needed to be released somehow in some way, and maybe some people will enjoy them. But this video is something that is another idea that's been resurrected, because about a year and a half ago, I was speaking to a friend of mine on YouTube, who I won't name, who had never seen any Studio Ghibli films and any Miyazaki films, and I was really hyping them up to this person. And I said, I was in work one day and I was thinking, like, what would be the best way to introduce the works of Hayao Miyazaki to someone who's never seen them before? And so I was thinking about this, and I thought, why don't I come up with like a viewing order, you know, to kind of really tailor the kind of ups and downs of his filmography and really think about it, just as something to kind of get me through the workday. And my friend said, okay. And so I wrote this whole list of like the order in which I would recommend watching Miyazaki's movies, and I sent them off to him, and he bought a couple of films, and then he never watched any of them. And, you know, I'm not going to say who it is, because at this point, you know, they're clearly not going to use my list, and so I'm going to release this list unto the world, and you're about to hear now my viewing order for Hayao Miyazaki's filmography. But, you know, it wouldn't be in the interest of fairness of revealing who that person was. Cough. Man v Film. Cough. So, Graham, get on it, man. Get watching those films. But I am going to use this list. I am going to read it off to you, and then maybe expand upon what I said. I haven't read this back now, so this is like a year and a half ago I wrote this, and so I'm going to read it to you now and take you through my viewing order for Miyazaki's films. I will say, actually, before I get into this, that I don't think there's any right or wrong way to watch Miyazaki's films. For me personally, it was a very scattershot. You know, I started with seeing a little bit of Porco Rosso when I was a kid, and there's a whole story about that you have heard far too many times. That was a very special film to me, and still is. Then I saw Princess Mononoke with Connie, but I was kind of drunk when we watched it. So you know, it's been all over the place, but it was certainly, you know, for me, I don't think there's a wrong way to do it, because they're all great films. There is not a bad film in this guy's filmography. I think it is one of the strongest, almost airtight filmographies of any director ever. I mean, there are ones that are better than other films for sure, and there's certain masterpieces and then films that aren't quite masterpieces for sure, but I don't think there's a wrong way to go about doing it at all. You know, you could watch them in any random order, put them in a randomizer, and you'll still have a good time. But and I suppose you could go in release order, which is always interesting, just to see the progression of a director, and you certainly see a progression, not only in him as a storyteller from his first film to his last, not even like a sense of maturity, because his last film is a very adult film. His first film is very much a kind of childlike, kind of fun adventure. But he dips in and out of those things. He'll make something very serious like Princess Mononoke, and then go back to something more light, and kind of Howl's Moving Castle is much different. But then there are kind of more darker themes in Howl's Moving Castle, and then you go to Ponyo, which is completely childlike and such a family film. So he's always gone in and out of those different themes. But anyway, here's my kind of my way, not that I've even done this myself, but the way I would introduce someone to it, just for fun, just in the sense of kind of guiding them through these movies in an interesting way. So to begin with, I wrote this introduction saying, so, my bored, work brain contemplations led me to wonder how I would structure a viewing order for someone watching Hayao Miyazaki's filmography for the first time. Obviously, this is under the assumption that the person, namely you, cough, Graham, cough, would get hooked early on and actually would want to follow through and watch all 11 of his feature films. I've taken into consideration both a varying tone from film to film, bringing things up and down, as well as preserving some of his best films until the very end. Feel free to disregard that this was just a fun exercise for me either way. And it remains that. Obviously, it doesn't bother me that Graham hasn't actually done this. But, you know, I wrote all this stuff, and so I thought it would be an interesting way to frame a video. So, number one, the first film I would recommend someone to start with for Hayao Miyazaki is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. I just watched this again last night, by the way, and God, I love this film. So, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind from 1984. This was the first original movie from Miyazaki. His very first film was based on an existing property. This is his original epic story, and it's an incredible film. And I wrote that, I'll try and hold this up while I read, perhaps not the ideal entry point into Miyazaki's work, as it's not as easily accessible as some of his more light-hearted and breezy films. Nausicaa is a post-apocalyptic epic and features many of the staples of Miyazaki's work: aviation, environmentalism, and a strong female lead. A stunning epic with one of my favorite all-time scores to boot, one of his best to start your journey should you accept it, so that right out of the gate you can see what he is truly capable of in just his second feature film. And I really do believe that. It's for someone's second movie, it's a pretty, I mean, it feels like almost like a late career epic. It feels like a Kurosawa's Ran or what's the other one, Kagemusha. You know, like, it's like the sum of this guy's work into this big epic. Like, there's so many of the things that he's concerned with that are wrapped up in this movie that you feel like it's near the end of his career, and he's pulling everything together in the way that, say, Makoto Shinkai pulled everything together that he's been working towards with Your Name. But yeah, the score's incredible, and I think it's a great film. It's an epic film. Certainly not his best, but I think it might be kind of an explosive way to really start off this thing. Number two I would recommend is from 1989, Kikis Delivery Service. And I say it almost feels like giving away too much to place Kiki as your next film, as it's one of my favorites, and I think it's one of Miyazaki's best also. But it shows you his range, as this is a completely different kind of film. A young witch leaves home at 13 to train on her own and settles in a seaside town and tries to fit in. It's absolutely charming and a brilliant, funny, coming-of-age story that blew me away when I first saw it. I expected something light and decent, but it packs an oddly strong punch amidst the brightness. So I've actually done a feature-length discussion on this with Daisuke Beppu, which has like over 17,000 views now, which is crazy to me. But if you haven't seen it, we talk about this film in depth. It's one of our favorites, and I love this film so much. It's just, oh my god, it's just so good. I love it every single time, and I think it's a masterpiece. It doesn't seem like one on the surface, but it really, really is. Number three, the third film I would recommend in my Miyazaki viewing order is from 2001, Spirited Away. So, Spirited Away, Miyazaki's most lauded film by far, the one that took home the Oscar, I'll leave that one in for free, the one that took home the Oscar, the Academy Award, and is definitely one of the cornerstones of anime as a whole. It's in the bottom of my ranking of his filmography, not the very bottom, but near the bottom, and yet I'd still class it as a masterpiece. One of the most imaginative films ever made, following a young girl trapped in a ghost world, centered around a huge bathhouse for otherworldly spirits, where she is forced to work in order to get home. My 10-year-old brother at the time of watching this leaned forward during one scene and said, "This is beautiful." And I agree. It's a stunning film. It's not one of my favorites for a number of reasons, but I think it's a masterpiece of imagination. And I guess I place that there because, you know, people kind of put it on a pedestal so much that I think that watching it early in your run of going through Miyazaki would be an interesting kind of exercise, I think. Much as it would to go with the fourth film, which is from 1979. It is his very first film, and it is Lupin III, Castle of Cagliostro. After three of his heavy-hitting best, your fourth film gives you a breather. Miyazaki's first film, another installment in the ongoing Lupin III series, the film follows a hotshot spy on an adventure to stop a counterfeiting ring and save a princess. It's like a James Bond, Indiana Jones hybrid, and features one of the coolest car chases you'll ever see in an animated film. Light, fun, action-packed, and surprisingly influential. Yeah, there's a very good Disney film that is influenced by the ending of this movie. It's just a blast. It's a real fun adventure film. full of spies and intrigue and kind of, castles and kind of, it's great. And there's a lot of like things in this film where you can see where Miyazaki's going in terms of the way he's using animation. And so it's really interesting to look at it after the fact. I think you need to see some of his best films before you see this one. If you started with this, I don't think you'd be as intrigued to follow on with the rest of them. But in a way, to get out of the way as well, because I think it's his weakest film. But that is not a slight on it in any way, shape, or form. It just doesn't have the weight that all the other films have. But that's by design, because it's just a fun kind of pulpy adventure, and that's kind of fine. So number 5, I would put you with the 2008 film Ponyo. Miyazaki dabbled with CGI from the late 90s onwards, but returned to purely hand-drawn animation for Ponyo, and the results are stunning. A weird and wonderful take on The Little Mermaid done in the way that only he can. He feels that this is a film for very young children and might be his most kid-friendly, family-oriented film. It really is. This film is just an absolute fucking delight from start to finish. It's a beautiful movie. And there's really moving parts as well near the end, and just a really sweet film. And the animation, oh my god, it's absolutely beautiful. The way that the scene when Ponyo is running across the crashing waves is it's gorgeous, but it's also so stirring and like powerful. I love it. Number 6, I would put you with The Wind Rises from 2013. His, to date, final film, and something so completely removed from a film like Ponyo. If that was made for kids, The Wind Rises is very much made for adults. His most serious film, though he couldn't resist a few fantastical dream sequences, a biopic about the designer of World War II fighter jets, an involving and emotional story. So me and Connie talked about this in the Studio Ghibli with Connie series in Asian Cinema Season 2, so you can go check out our kind of more extended thoughts there. Compared to his other films, it's a bit more dry, but it's a beautiful film, and the morality of it all, this guy who just wants to be a pilot, he wants to fly, he wants to be among the clouds, but he's short-sighted. So all he can do is design planes, and those planes ultimately go on to be instruments of war, which isn't really his intent, but it's kind of the way things have played out for him. And it's a very emotional and moving story, but definitely a more slow-paced one, and I think perfectly placed in the middle to kind of sandwich between two of his more fantastical movies. And again, to show you the progression from a film like Ponyo into The Wind Rises, just to show you the range of this filmmaker. So number 7, like I said, sandwiching The Wind Rises between more kind of fantasy films, we have Howl's Moving Castle from 2004. From his most serious subject matter focused on true events to another wild ride of sheer unbridled imagination. A young woman is cursed to become an old woman and ends up on the moving castle owned by the mysterious wizard Howl. One of the characters is a talking flame on a stove. It's mental and delightful. We also covered this as well, so you can go check out the video on that. It's a brilliant film. The imagination on play here is just incredible. It's based off an existing book. I love the character of Sophie in this, to go from this young woman to this old woman, and all the weird characters that kind of get involved in this very strange family dynamic that evolves on this main location, Howl's Moving Castle. It's just brilliant, and definitely my lower favorites of Miyazaki, but I still love it. Then we have number 8, which is from 1992, and it is, of course, Porco Rosso. My personal favourite, and a film that's very special to me for many reasons. An excellent score and gorgeous visuals centered on a goofy, fun love letter to nostalgia and old Hollywood. I love this film, and I go on to continue to say that a man who is cursed to look like a humanoid pig roams the skies of 1920s Italy and Croatia as a bounty hunter in his red seaplane. Romance, regret, pride, and poignance. I couldn't have said it any better myself. Oh wait, I guess I just did. I love this film, and I've talked about it ad nauseum. Me and Daisuke also did an extended discussion on this, which is, I think, longer than the movie. So you can go check that out. I love talking about this film with Daisuke and just getting all my thoughts and just throwing them out there on this film, so I won't talk about it much longer. But you all know how much I love this film. I've blathered on about it far too many times. And then we move on to the 9th film. We're getting close to the end now, and it is his 1986 film, the first Studio Ghibli film that was made Laputa Castle in the Sky. The film that founded Studio Ghibli, beat me to it myself, and for my money, one of the best adventure movies ever made, animated or otherwise. A young boy and a young girl go on an epic journey on the run from pirates, the government, to try and find a mythic floating castle in the clouds. A breathtaking film. Oh, it really is one of the best adventure films. It's non-stop from start to finish. It's so full of wonder and like majesty. The whole final like half of the film set on that castle is when they first see the castle in the sky, the boy talking about it at the beginning of the film. My father once saw this castle in the sky. He took a picture of half of it. People don't believe it exists, but I want to prove my father right. I want to find this castle in the sky. And then this girl who is bound by destiny to be taken to this castle, and they get thrown together, and they become firm friends, and they go on this wild adventure together. They get separated, they come back together again. They meet these pirates who at first seem like these evil villains, and we learn the soft kind of layer underneath them, and then we get to this very kind of traditional storybook kind of villain who wants to destroy everything in just this larger than life setting. Oh my god, it's such an amazing film. And then we move down to the 10th film, the penultimate film in this countdown. Obviously, if you were to follow this list, it could take you years to get through. Yet, I'm still structuring it in mind to adjust tempo and tones to provide the most varied film-to-film experience, and this, I feel, is the perfect stopgap for the last 3 picks. So we've had this like huge, big, epic adventure, it's like non-stop action, all sorts of stuff going on, and then we calm it down a bit with 1988's My Neighbor Totoro. So, along with Spirited Away, Totoro is the movie that Miyazaki is most known for, and that's for a reason. 2 young sisters move to the country with their father and meet a mysterious creature in the woods. It's like an Enid Blyton story, but with more depth and spirituality, an absolute delight. It's just a great film. It's so simple. It breezes along at 90 minutes, and there is a scene at a bus stop in this movie that is just about like perfect cinema, and it's so lovable, charming, sweet. Again, an absolute delight. People have talked about this film to death, and it's for a reason. And I think that kind of calms you down a bit and just shows you like maybe the perfect Miyazaki film before we round it off with, in my opinion, his best film. So, number 11. Miyazaki's true masterpiece, in my eyes, and his best film. Another epic that is hard to even describe, from 1997, Princess Mononoke. This is where all his strengths really do coalesce as we follow a young warrior on a quest to save his life from a mortal wound sustained from a demon, where he meets a young woman brought up by the wolf gods of the forest, Princess Mononoke. Like a lot of his films, it's steeped in the spiritual and a deep environmental message wrapped up in fantasy and mysticism. And if you don't manage to enjoy any of these films, I don't know what to say to you, but that won't be much of an issue, as I'd never talk to you again. Good luck. And I also added at the end, I would highly recommend watching any of these films in the original Japanese language. Don't be tempted by the well-cast Disney dubs, even though some of them are very good. So Princess Mononoke, the final film in my rundown. I would just say leave the best till last. I mean, it's not my favorite, but I think it's his best. It's this absolute epic. Like the themes, it's so rich and layered and powerful. The music, the animation, so gorgeous, and it has a real message behind it, and it feels like an animated Kurosawa film with a fantasy twist. Not that Kurosawa never dabbled in fantasy either, I suppose, but just an amazing film, and one that I think would be best to save until last. I don't actually know what my actual order was, but because my discovery of Miyazaki happened through all of my Letterboxd years, I could go back and see the order I watched them, which might be interesting to look into. But yeah, maybe I could make a video about that. Who knows? Leave your thoughts on that down below. But that has been my ranking order of all of Miyazaki's films that I sent to Graham at Man v Film, which he promptly ignored. And there you go. So that's kind of the Miyazaki filmography there, and also maybe the thumbnail. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this director. He's probably in my top 5 favorite directors, I think. And that would be my introduction to him. Again, just kind of the kind of what's the term? ebbs and flows, you know, kind of just, you know, taking you up with a big action epic, then down to something like My Neighbor Totoro, you know, to have something really kind of serious like The Wind Rises, and then something light and like Ponyo. So there's lots of ways you can do it, and as I said, there's no wrong way to do it either. So just watch the films, enjoy them, and have a blast. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you with the next one, which will probably be a couple more Miyazaki themed videos. So look forward to them, and I'll see you with those.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you.